3 days ago, my 2021 Honda Civic Type R that we all-wheel drive converted hit the dyno for the very first time. We ended up blowing the engine on the dyno.
What? Yep.
What? 2 days ago, we pulled the car apart, pulled apart the engine, figured out what happened, and overnighted all of the parts to fix the engine. 1 day ago, we rebuilt the whole entire engine, and today, I want to put this whole entire car back together again. If that ain't a fast turnaround, I don't know what is. Now, before we put the whole entire car back together, I have a couple special gifts for the car, just so we never have to tear this thing apart again. When we did these straight cut gears in the transmission, I highly debated doing a transfer case as well. I did not, but this time around, we are. So I got a couple goodies from PPG, and this should allow us to handle all of the power that we ever want to throw at this car, which of course there is a limit. We don't have a sleeved block. There's a couple other limiting factors of this build, but now we will not be worried about grenading our transfer case. These 3 parts cost a whopping $2,100. Initially, I was gonna do everything in the T-case. I was gonna do the transfer gears, the shaft, the hypoids, and the billet case itself. But after talking to quite a few different Honda people, big up in the industry, transmission experts, all of them recommended to just do what we have here. So we have the PPG transfer gears, and we have the PPG transfer case shaft. So the shaft and that gear there go in the T-case. We do have to open up the transmission. And we do have to open up the transmission one last time to slap in the transfer gear. Thankfully, the trans is already out of the car, of course, because with the motor's out, so it'll only be a couple minutes. Let's go ahead and work on the transfer case first. Thankfully, these Honda T cases are very, very easy to work on. Here you see me taking off the pinion nut. Definitely did not need to do that. And then there's only 3 bolts holding the casing together. As soon as those 3 bolts come out, the housing pops apart. A couple of ugga-duggas on this nut here. And off comes the bearing and the sleeve. And a few seconds later, our entire transfer case is disassembled. Here is the factory gear and shaft out of the T-case, and here's the PPG gear and shaft. As you can see, the PPG parts are straight cut, factory being helical. A little bit of lube on our new shaft, and this thing is going right back together. I know for the hypoids you do need a shim for. Apparently for the transfer case shaft, what you want to do is just put the nut back in the same exact location, and that's all that's needed. T-case is back together with the shaft and the new upgraded gear. Now it's time to get the transfer gear into the trans. It's only my 4th or 5th time pulling this transmission apart. I used to be deathly afraid of transmission work, but after going through this one a few times, I'm really starting to get the hang of everything. Center diff comes out, right hand threaded bolts come out, and there is the factory transfer gear. There's a little difference, PPG straight cut versus the factory. And for the very, very, very last time, the transmission is going back together. A little bit difficult with this setup being that we run the 6th gear collar. So both shafts and all of the shift forks have to go in all at the same time. Just a touch of Honda Bond to seal her up, and we have a complete trans. So it has been over 24 hours since we fully assembled this engine. And if we take a look, our pan RTV did not cure. Everything else on the engine we used Honda Bond on. I ran out, so I used Permatex Ultra Gray, which I never have good luck with this. So I need to pull the pan, wipe all that off, run to the Honda dealer, pick up some more Honda Bond. Thankfully, it's just the pan. The girdle is sealed with Honda Bond. Timing cover is also Honda Bond as well. So just the pan, got to pull and reseal with the good stuff, not with junk. We now have a complete transmission, T-case. Those should be good for the life of this car, unless we decide to turn it up past 1,000, I would say. Those should be good. And we have a complete engine. The only thing that I wish I would have done if I could go back in time is sleeve this thing. It's got everything else, but we should be good there because I don't plan on making anything north of realistically $750. maybe 800. Before I attach these two guys, let's run through and get a ton of these parts back on the motor. So much easier to do while it's outside of the car. And then we can move on to the flywheel and clutch, which I will show you guys exactly what I'm gonna do so we do not run into the same issue again of the flywheel bolts backing out. On goes our modified water pump. I'm definitely afraid of anything vibrating loose, so you can see I'm going ham on the Loctite on this build. AC compressor that I cannot get to work is going back on. A couple other little accessories, and it's time for some more upgrades. One major thing that was holding this car back on the dyno was the size of our injectors. So we're currently running a set of FIC 1650s, and on the pull that we made nearly 700 wheel, we were at 120% injector duty cycle, which is overrunning the injectors. So to safely run these things, we'd be at low 600, which of course isn't quite enough power for this build, for me at least. I ordered in a set of 2150s. They did not come in time, so we are gonna go snag the injectors off the EM1. Those are a set of ID 2000s, and that'll be plenty to make whatever sort of power we want to on the Type R. Going from FICs to IDs, the wiring for the injectors is different. There was no way I was gonna cut up the harness on the EM1. So if you're ever in a pickle and you need ID 2000 pigtails, here's the part number. Let's go ahead and get these guys wired in. Truth be told, I never liked how I did these pigtails. They did not look good whatsoever. So I'm gonna spend my time on these and make them look nice. Before and after. Intake mani goes back on with the fuel rail and injectors, and we have a 100% complete, ready to go setup. So as you guys know, the whole reason this car came back apart and we had to build the motor again is because the flywheel bolts backed out, which in turn broke the timing sprocket on the crank, which in turn bent all the valves. So what we're doing to mitigate this issue is we have a couple parts from 4-piston. This is their diamond lock. So this goes in between the flywheel and the crank. And then we have the 4-piston ARP flywheel bolts, which go to 130 foot-pounds instead of the factory, I think it was like 90 foot-pounds. So we're gonna use this, we're using this. Of course, we're gonna Loctite them, and I'm very, very confident with this and the crazy torque spec on these guys that we will have no problems. To be honest, I was a little bit afraid of these threads pulling out of the crank going to 130 foot-pounds, but as soon as my torque wrench beeped, I knew we were good to go, and I am 100% confident these things are never going to back out. First up, the motor and trans are gonna go in together just like this. Get the two side motor mounts on, and then the subframe assembly, which is back there, that goes up in there, and then the T-case. You know it's bad when you could probably do it with your eyes closed. I'm sure with all the mock-up, this motor was in and out probably 20 or 30 times for that alone, as we built all the motor mounts and modified the subframe and did all that fun stuff when we were converting this thing to all-wheel drive. Motor and trans are in. Subframe with the rack and some suspension stuff is going back in. Unfortunately, pulled some threads out of the frame, so doing a quick helicoil here. Threads are good to go. Bam, check that out. Our newly built transfer case is going in, and the chirps key goes on. We are close, very, very close. Let's make sure our new motor has the capability of building oil pressure. Then we need to put some plugs in it, some coils on her, and we can fire it up. Battery's plugged in, fuses are out for the fuel pumps because I don't want fuel running through this thing right now. It's actually still got E85 in it from the tune day, so we do need to drain that and go back to pump gas. But let's see if old girl will give us some goodies. Hitting 40 PSI of oil pressure while cranking. Time to drain out the ethanol and throw in some pump gas. Car is complete enough to fire up. We're getting good oil pressure. We got pump gas back in her. Let's see what happens. She's definitely missing on a cylinder or two. Checked over all the plugs and coils. All that was good to go. Found out the throttle body was not opening, so I went ahead and got that wiring fixed. Rescaled the injectors, hoping it was running just deathly rich from the 2000 cc's. All the issues are fixed. Of course, the car does need a tune. With just an injector rescale, as you can hear, she doesn't run all that good, but the little random misfire that we had is now fixed. And before I go and attempt to drive this thing, hopefully it runs at least good enough to drive it. There's one more thing that I need to do on the car that is probably gonna one day save my life. Let me show you guys what I'm talking about. So we had to do what you call a bump steer kit on this car. Now we had to make this one because no aftermarket company makes one that is this height. And you can just tell by looking at it, it is a little bit sketchy. So I want to figure out a good solid way to attach this back to the knuckle, just to have another bracing point. So I built a little standoff that goes on the hub bolt right there. The same concept for the top of the bump steer kit. Now I'm going to take a rod. It's going to be a 1/2-inch rod that is going to connect the two, and that is going to solve all of my worries. Should be very, very sturdy. Not should be, I know it will be. This isn't something to take lightly, and every time I drove this car, it was a little sus. This here is what I ended up with, and that's how she looks installed onto the car. Looks much safer. It is much safer, and we ain't gonna have any problems now, ever. There was no way I could put these parts on just being bare metal, so I had to bust out the black jack from Prismatic Powders. Here's how they look installed, but more importantly, here's how they operate installed. Topped her off with coolant, bled out the brakes, slapped on the wheels, and I'm so confident that this build is complete that I even installed all of the engine covers. Well, friends, wish me luck. It's always more nerve-wracking when it's more things messed with. If it's just the motor, it's still nerve-wracking. But when it's a brand new motor, we went through the T-case, we went through the transmission, went through a lot of stuff, different injectors, a lot of different things that it's making me extra nervous. So let's, I guess, see how it goes. It is so much smoother than before. Imagine that, my flywheel's not all bouncing around, vibrating this car apart. It's still more than a stock FK, of course. If before it was like a 7 out of 10 on the vibration scale, now it's like a 3. Well, it moves, that's a good sign, right? The sound of the straight cuts. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. The transfer gears are also straight cut, which is amplifying the sound of the straight cut 1 through 4. We do run the factory 5th gear, the helical gear in this car, so 5th gear doesn't whine nearly as bad as 1 through 4. But truth be told, I freaking love how the straight cuts sound. Surprisingly enough, it's running very, very nice. I'm watching the AFRs on the Haltech dash here. Cruising around, it's low 14s, mid 14s. Good enough to cruise until we can get a tune on her. Oh man, what a relief. What a relief. This thing is running T's. 169 coolant temps, man oh man. 58 PSI of oil pressure, everything is golden. Just need some gas. Technically speaking, I could do a pull right now, but I'm not gonna. That sounds a little dangerous. Come on, homie, go. Oh shit, she does need a tune. What are you doing, stupid Porsche? Bro, come on. It's a green light, go. Now you go. This place only has 91, but I'd rather take 91 than no gas. All right, that'll be enough. Of course, when we go to tune this thing, I want to be at 92. I need to get the gas gauge working as well. I think I plugged it into the wrong pin on the back of the Haltech dash. So it's just saying I have 100% fuel level, which that ain't true. Oh my lord. straight cut transfer gears made the trans probably twice as loud. It's such a good sound though. I love how it sounds. Look at that. Factory backup cameras working great. Factory e-brake working great. There's only a couple little things that I would ever want to change on this car. If I could get the factory start button, the single push button to work one day, that would be great. For now, the push on and then start button on the other side works perfectly fine. If ACT ever comes out with a mod twin like they have for the Evos and STIs, I would 100% pull this whole entire car apart just to do that. That clutch feels so good. Not saying that the one in here does not, but it is a 6-puck, so it's a little bit more aggressive. And what else? We need to get the AC working. Those are the only things. Other than that, this car is so amazing. I'm so happy now that it doesn't vibrate nearly as bad. I'm sure the ATI damper helped a lot with that. But not only that, of course, when your flywheel ain't bouncing around loose, that is probably the biggest reason as to why it drives so good. I'm hyped. All the other factory amenities work great though. The backup camera, the radio, the e-brake, every other little thing, all the windows, the power mirrors, the locks, everything else works on this car like I wanted it to when I initially started building it. The electric power steering, every little thing. We literally just need AC and we need 35 pounds of boost.